Psyched podcast, brought to you by the Women in Psychedelics Network. I'm your host, Kaya Roman, and today I am so psyched to have Olivia Mannix with us. She is the CEO of Felicity Pharma, one of the only female CEOs in the psychedelic space, and she has an incredible background. We're so lucky to get this time with Olivia. Let me tell you guys a little bit about her. This amazing rock star. So Olivia founded one of the first ancillary cannabis companies, Cannabrand, in 2013. So she's really a pioneer, seeing the potential for cannabis and psychedelics long before others were recognizing it and really dedicating her life to destigmatizing these substances. She also founded the first female psychedelics biotech company for women's health, and that's Felicity Pharma. So I'm super excited to dig into what Felicity Pharma is doing. So thank you, Olivia, and welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Kaya. I appreciate it.
First, I would love to hear kind of like Felicity's origin story. So you've obviously been an entrepreneur for at least a decade, but
Right.
how does one get the idea that we need to start a biotech pharma company for women's health?
Right. I know it's a wild idea, right?
I mean, obviously very
So
needed, but yes, I'd love to know your origin story.
absolutely, yes. So, and thanks for giving some background information. So after being in the cannabis space for, 10 plus years, I saw the opportunity and just the need for psychedelic medicine as well.
Yeah.
And I pivoted more on my agency side, so the marketing, branding, PR side, from Cannabrand to psilocybin, which is psychedelic focused. And around that time as well, this is like 2019-ish, I was looking to also get into the investment space as well and potentially start a fund. And I just had met with quite a few VCs in this space, and they, one of the groups actually introduced me to Dr. Gigi Koo, who is my current partner at Felicity. And her and I just hit it off. She has the scientific physician's background, really understanding how the brain works and traumatic brain injury specifically. And then I have the marketing background. So we really felt that our skill sets complemented each other. And we have been doing a lot of research within the space and specifically with women's disorders. And there's really been no drugs developed, on the FDA level for women besides birth control the last 30 years. So I think it's really time for there to be women-specific therapeutics that take into account, our hormones, our biology, our menstrual cycles, what have you. And specifically with this disorder, it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD. It affects up to 12% of women globally, and it is a very, very severe psychosis form of PMS. With really no therapeutics on the market besides your antidepressants. So most of the time they don't work, and they are. There's really just an opportunity for us to come in and see that psychedelics can help, because a lot of symptoms, the depression, the anxiety, what have you, have been proven to be alleviated by psychedelic medicine. So we're really confident and excited to be working on this.
Wow. Well, first of all, it's really amazing that you decided to focus on this condition that I know people who suffer from it, and it is horrible. So if anyone out there is wondering, well, PMDD, I know about PMS, but do I have PMDD? Because like my period every month is so horrible. Like I want to die every month. I don't just get like a little bit irritable. I like want to die, right? I mean, how would somebody out there listening know if they have PMDD? What are some of the symptoms?
Sure. So it's definitely, it occurs 3 to 5 days before your luteal cycle. And it's basically just major highs and lows
Mm.
of depression, anxiety, mania, just basically like a psychotic state. You also can have serious pelvic pain,
Oh.
as well as some other physical side effects. So basically, if you have symptoms of pain, just mental agitation, that's just far exceeds like your traditional premenstrual syndrome, then you
Mm.
might have it. You go see a psychologist and see if that not that they're going to do too much for
Right.
you,
There's
but
no real great treatments for it, it sounds like. That's why you guys decided to go after it. And so
yeah.
how is what you're looking at with Felicity Pharma for PMDD, say, different than what Cybin or Atai or MindMed or some of these other psychedelic, pharma companies that are developing mood formulations for depression, anxiety, based on psychedelic compounds? How is what you're looking at different than any of those?
So they're looking at more, from my understanding, a more broad scope. So your quintessential depression, your anxiety, your binge eating disorders,
Mm.
your alcoholism, things like that. We're really focused on women. So basically, um, the trials we will be conducting are just with women.
Mm-hmm.
And actually,
That's
women
amazing.
have been neglected from clinical trials in the past because of
Yeah.
hormones, because of not being able to really track how drugs are working for them. But we're really taking into account women in this. And our first trial will be 10 patients only. So it's going to be, streamlined enough
Mm-hmm.
to be able to really track what's going on and how the psychedelics are helping them.
Okay, I need a little bit more information about that. But first of all, I do want to comment because I interviewed you for an article that I wrote for Psychedelics Today about clinical trials and how they have traditionally excluded women, not just because of our hormone fluctuation, but largely because of, the risk of pregnancy. Like if you are anywhere in the spectrum of potentially childbearing, the I
Mm-hmm.
believe prior to the 1990s, clinical trials were encouraged to not include women, which means that most of the medications that are on the market today weren't tested for the different contraindications that they would have for women, which are many. So I'm glad that's no longer the case. I'm glad that things are changing, but obviously we still have a long way to go. So I love that you are actually doing a clinical trial only for women. But let me know, like, where is Felicity in the clinical trial? Are you guys doing phase one, which is patient people that don't have PMDD just to test for safety, or are you already going into phase two, which is people that actually have the condition?
Right. So we would be going into phase 2A. So great question. And that is because we are working with psilocybin. So we're able to have the
Oh,
safety and
wonderful.
efficacy has already cleared.
Mm.
Um, so that will be a 10-person trial. We're in the process of designing it. And basically, we're just looking for a positive signal so that we can then progress to the next phase. So that's just what the FDA asks for, looks for
Got it.
in this process.
So
Yeah.
are you looking at just psilocybin, or there's something unique about your formula, right?
Yeah. So
I
we're
read a
looking
little bit about
at,
it.
oh, sure, sure. So we're looking at psilocybin, and then another known drug. So that's sort of some of our IP in terms of where we're going to be going
Right.
with that. But basically, pairing the psilocybin with hormone, a known drug, what have you, for a method of use for
Oh,
how
got it.
the patent would work out.
Hmm.
So the first trial is going to just be, the large 25 milligram dose
Okay.
with a psychedelic assisted therapy. Um, and then we're looking to possibly have more of a microdose maintenance
Hmm.
after the patient goes through the first megadose.
Oh, okay. And that's what you're testing in this trial, coming up with 10 people.
Correct.
Wow.
Yep.
So how does it work if, let's say, your trial shows great results and you want to move
Mhm,
forward with FDA approval for this
mhm.
method of use, but psilocybin isn't legal at a federal level in this country yet? How does that impact kind of, your business plan?
Yeah, so actually this is a very different trajectory than like your recreational market, right? So like cannabis, for instance, is a great example. It used to be strictly medical, and now it has adult use sales. So if you're 21 plus, in several states, you can purchase cannabis as you would alcohol. This is a totally different trajectory. So we're actually only going through the FDA and creating drugs.
Hmm.
So they're actually going to be pharmaceutical medicines that you would be prescribed to by a physician.
Hmm.
So it's not really competing with the rec side of things at
Right.
all. Um, it's going to be a way that it's very regulated, that there's a lot of monitoring
Hmm.
with the use of it. So that's basically like in a nutshell the difference.
However, psilocybin would still need to be rescheduled first, right?
Actually would not need to be.
Oh, tell me
So
how that would
it's
work
and
because
actually
psilocybin is currently Schedule 1, which, yeah, tell me how that would work if your drug gets approved, but while psilocybin is still on Schedule 1.
so Yeah, so like for instance, like there are a lot of drugs that are Schedule One that are actually used in pharma
Hmm.
drugs. So basically, the scheduling of the drug doesn't have to do with the FDA process, and
Hmm.
actually, and when I say drug, I mean like a prescription medicine.
Right.
So it's different. It's like kind of comparing like apples and oranges.
Hmm.
Um, the I think what maybe what you're getting at is a little bit more of the rec side of
Okay.
things. So if psilocybin, I think MDMA is up for discussion as
Mm.
well of for legalizing recreationally, then they would need to be rescheduled or descheduled. But when it comes to like biotech drug development, it's more or less the FDA allowing trials and testing to be done on these drugs.
But are you saying that a doctor would be able to prescribe this drug if it becomes FDA approved, even if it's still Schedule 1?
Correct.
Got
Yes,
it.
absolutely.
Okay, wonderful. Um,
Confusing. Yeah.
yeah, it does get confusing because there's so many models. Like if through
Mhm.
doing your MDMA treatments through a MAPS approved provider, but it's not necessarily, I guess, being
Mhm.
prescribed by a doctor. So yeah, it's such an interesting time, isn't it, to be in
Right.
psychedelics, like to see
It is.
how this is all going, how the regulations are going to change, and how the FDA will approve or not approve or allow these medicines to move forward. You're very, very
Right.
innovative to be in this space, and I love that you're focusing on women's health because I don't know, it seems like hardly anybody else is. So I wonder if you have
Right.
other things in your pipeline. Are you looking at any other women's health conditions in the future?
Yes, so we're actually also very interested in sexual desire. So there's
Mm.
a disorder, hyposexual desire dysfunction,
Hmm.
um, which basically is the lack of desire to have intercourse, which affects a large percentage of women as
Yeah.
well. So we're looking at using probably more like an MDMA
Right.
type of drug for that. And then also postpartum
Oh, that's a
depression.
big one.
Yeah, which is such a major disorder. The thing about that is a lot of times you'll have a lactating mother,
Exactly.
and trials with lactation is a gray area as well.
Hmm.
So that would probably be something we would look at after this preliminary trial.
Sounds like it's time to break new ground, though. I mean, we need clinical trials with lactating women. I know it's,
Oh yeah.
yes, of course, safety always first. But how else will we know how to help people? And
Right,
these compounds show so much promise.
right.
So,
There's so much misinformation about like what gets into the breast milk. Like, does cannabis get into your breast
right.
milk? Does alcohol even get in? It used to be all about pumping and dumping, and now it's like, oh, it's fine if you have a few glasses of something and
Mm,
breastfeed. There's really no data around that.
yeah, we absolutely need that. Do you think that psychedelics can like uniquely help women in ways that, are specific to women? I mean, we're talking about specific conditions, but yeah, I'm just wondering because you're deciding to focus on women. What is it about, psychedelics for women that you think is very promising?
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, psychedelics really just change your mindset and just the neuroplasticity. So like the creating the malleable neurons and just like
Mm,
restructuring, rethinking, reforming, um, and then the recreation of the neurons as well. I think is a huge game changer.
hmm.
So I think that um, is definitely going to be a huge potential for women. I don't know that necessarily psychedelics, and I think it affects men and women similarly, but the using the hormones and some of the other things with our drug, I think is going to be a game changer.
Yes, yes. Wow.
Yes.
I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to that. Me and many millions of women are looking forward to that. Yeah, it's, of course, everybody can struggle with moods, depression, anxiety, physical conditions, but I feel like, for like in honor of continuing our species, like women have also this whole extra layer of hormones that we deal with every month and at different
Mhm.
phases of our lives. And it seems like it just makes everything more intense. So,
Right.
yeah, I'm really, again, grateful that you're looking at solutions and ways to help. But it's not an easy path that you've chosen, Olivia. I mean, you are one of the only women CEOs that I've met in this growing industry, and just in biotech and pharma in general. And it's it's still, I mean, we are for sure we've come a long way in breaking the stigma and learning what's possible, but we're still very much at the beginning of this road.
Mhm.
So what's it like for you? That's what I really want to know. What's it like for you to be a woman CEO in this space? And how do you keep going? What motivates you to be on this, forging ahead on this path?
Great. Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's, what's it like? It's, I don't want to say it's anything different than what it is for men, but I mean, it's challenging. You have to, really know your stuff, know your team. Fundraising, has not been the easiest lately with the space being sort of up and down. But I mean, just really focusing on all the people that we could help potentially
Mm,
and just all the people that are
yeah,
suffering and how psychedelic medicine really is, I think the answer to a lot of disease.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, great answer. And I mean, that's really what it takes, right? Is to have a mission to help people. If that's what motivates you and drives you forward, then that's definitely an important reason to get up every day and do the work. But I wanted to ask,
Absolutely.
about this neuroplasticity. I mean,
Hmm.
really, we are in the business of neuroplasticity and psychedelics. If you're in psychedelics,
Yeah.
there's lots of different ways that people are doing it, macrodoses, microdoses, daily, medications that people are developing, all kinds of things. Um, but and I wrote a book called The Joy Plan about the neuroscience of joy, and it's basically all about neuroplasticity and how to change habits in your brain. Now, I wrote that book in 2015 before I had had a psychedelic experience. And then I learned about, all these psychedelics are totally different, but they all seem to have that neuroplasticity instigator in common. And what I wonder though is how important is the component of what you do with that extra neuroplasticity? Like, if you create extra neuroplasticity, but then you're just thinking the same thoughts or doing the same actions or saying the same words or I don't know, focusing on something even more negative, then you could be reinforcing like even stronger neural
Right.
pathways that make you worse potentially.
Sure.
So I always think of like create extra neuroplasticity and then have some very important daily practices or a coach that you're working with or a group that you're working with or something that's then helping you basically mold and neurosculpt that neuroplastic environment to fit the way that you want to feel and the way that you want to think. And when you're doing something like drug development and you're coming up with maybe something somebody's going to take every day, well, how does that combine with sort of other practices that will make sure it's effective?
Yeah, and that's a great point and a great question again. So basically, with the first dose, it's a psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So you're in a therapeutic setting. You have two to three therapists, psychologists with you that are really helping you work through any of your traumas, any of your past, anything that's coming up for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the protocol would be for the patients to speak and see therapists, once a week while still taking the
Yeah.
medicine. And then with the weekly maintenance of the microdose that would come after
Oh,
that.
wow.
So yeah, so it would be part of the prescription that you'd have to follow up and have this therapeutic setting with the drug.
Wow. It's a really holistic approach. And
Yes.
I'm so glad to hear that you're going about it that way. Now, I know, with MAPS, they also have a very holistic approach where you have these sessions and you have integration support, but of course to have something that hands-on and that extensive, it's very expensive. And
Mm.
I can imagine your treatment protocol would be as well. So is the goal to like have health insurance cover it?
Yes, absolutely. Just as you would have your antidepressants covered by your insurance company, we do the same thing. That's definitely down the road because it takes a while to have a drug approved and go through all of that process.
Mm,
But we definitely want to make this accessible for patients of all socioeconomic
yeah.
backgrounds, and so that's a huge point as well.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, it's great to know that's part of the roadmap. I'm sure for you and for everyone as well. But like I said, we're here at the beginning of this journey, so it's a
Right.
really exciting time. Do you have any predictions for the future? Like, where do you think we're going to be with psychedelics in 5 years?
5 years, yeah. Hopefully, we'll have a few drugs approved and on the market for doctors
Yeah,
to be able to prescribe to patients. Because I think that we're since I mean, there's always been mental health issues from the beginning of time, but I think that these drugs can really help a lot of people and will save lives, really. So
yeah,
just getting them to the right hands with the right therapeutic setting, I think is going to be hopefully what we see here in the future. Versus I'm all about taking psychedelic medicine recreationally, for fun, what have you. But like it definitely needs to be regulated. There needs to be again that therapeutic aspect as well, and just the monitoring and such. Because, for instance, if you just take a dose of something somewhere, you don't really know exactly what you're getting, and how it was grown, how it was cultivated, as well as really what the dosage is.
hmm
So this is just a much safer, regulated
hmm
way to.
Well, plus, like we talked about, you're creating that extra neuroplastic state. So
Hmm.
it's not just what happens during the experience, but also what happens afterwards that's very important to your outcome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really, I love what you're doing. And I'm sure our listeners are going to be very excited to follow your journey and Felicity Pharma's journey. So, how can people find out more and how can people follow along on this, exciting process?
Yeah. So we're pretty public in terms of sort of what we're working on. We're on LinkedIn. We keep our website up to date. So that's pretty much where you can find
Okay,
us,
great.
or following me as well. Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And is there anything that you would, like to leave people with?
Yeah, I mean, just supporting the industry and what we're doing, I think is great, and making sure to educate friends and family. So, I think with the cannabis space, people just assume that you could buy weed anywhere, but this is really a very
Mm,
serious way to go about it through the drug process, through the FDA. So just making sure that a dinner time conversation, you're just really getting the information, the education to people who might be opponents of what we're doing. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's true. I mean, the way that we are going to really bring these medicines out to help as many people as possible is the more of us that are willing to share our own personal experiences, share the science, share
Yes.
the latest research and findings and just continue to break those stigmas and increase awareness and education. So I thank you for that. I thank you for being on the forefront.
Nice.
And Olivia Mannix, Felicity Pharma, everyone, please follow along. This company is doing really incredible work. Thanks again, Olivia, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.